how can estate agents make their content more memorable? Thanks for joining me today. I'm with Neil Whitfield, who is an estate agency marketeer, and he helps estate agents get more business. Thanks for joining me today, Neil.
Hi, Chris.
You are just written this book, 5 Mile Famous, and in it you say that estate agents can get their content marketed and more importantly noticed by doing this one thing. What's that one thing? Talk to me.
It's telling stories.
Okay, why do people love stories? Why are they so powerful?
Well, I think it goes back to when we were living in caves long before we were selling houses. That's how people conveyed information. They would tell a story, and
don't go near that because the saber-toothed tiger. Ooh, scary.
I went down to that watering hole, and when I did, this is what happened, and then I had to run away. And there's a lot of psychological and neuroscience research to say that the human brain finds stories a hell of a lot stickier than just recounting facts.
Well, you can't remember what your other half told you to get from the supermarket, but you can remember the plot line to the film from all the fairy tales that your parents told you when you were younger.
Well, exactly. And fairy tales have evolved from means of passing on information from generation to generation.
Okay, so do all estate agents now need to turn into Jack and Ori storytellers then?
It would help. I mean, I cover it in the book. There are some very, very simple techniques. The most simple being make sure that you've got a beginning, a middle, and an end.
Okay, beginning, middle. It's very easy to say. Are we saying like set the scene? I mean, I'm a huge fan of the hero's journey technique, which is more of a
and I cover that. I mean, the hero's journey breaks it down, and I use an example of how you can use the hero's journey to the example I use is telling the story of when an HMO landlord came into my agency, because it's a true story, and having problems with poor quality tenants, lots of churn. We advised them of, a way to potentially get a better class of tenant, get a higher rent. They then went on the transformation that they talk about in the hero's journey, and at the very end, they refurbed the property. They got a better quality tenant, and everybody lived happily ever after.
The way I teach people how to do stories is, number one, set the scene. So you basically set who the key players are, remembering that the hero is not you, the agent, but the person. That's important.
Absolutely.
Or as I call it, Obi-Wan versus Skywalker.
Well, the agent should always be the Obi-Wan. The agent should always be the wise sage and guide.
Yeah. So you set the scene, then the poo hits the fan.
Yeah.
Okay, because all good stories need a poo hitting the fan.
Yeah.
And then the sage old wise comes in and gives certain options and paths.
Yeah.
And the best choice is not always the easiest choice, is it?
No, and there's always usually a bit of a struggle along the way.
It's got to be a struggle. It's a bit like my missus watch Homes Under the Hammer and they come back and they haven't done the house. Well, she's in a bad mood for the rest of the day. But if you do that, this is the transfer. That's, Homes Under the Hammer is, is it going to sell? Someone buys it. What are you going to do to it? Come back 10 minutes later. This is it. I mean, I'll give you a case. I know of the story Grand Designs, the TV program, where they filmed it and it's never been published because there was no problems.
Because it was just too smooth sailing.
There was no problems whatsoever.
Yeah.
Scary, isn't it?
Yeah.
But that's what people watch it for. So what sort of stories could estate agents be doing? Can estate agents do it? A bit like Mrs. Miggins wanted to move to her daughter in Droitwich, couldn't sell her, went on the market with an online estate agent, who had nothing wrong with online estate agents, didn't get on very well. They came in, sorted it all out, difficult decisions to make. Now daughter lives in.
Yeah, I mean, I think I cover it in the book, but, other people's stories are more compelling and more believable than the estate agent saying, look at how clever we are. So actually, the best example
So the estate agent can tell the story of the person?
Or, even better, the person tells the story of the person.
Yes, I agree with that.
So
getting someone on camera is going to be hard work, isn't it?
I think a lot of it comes down to timing. If you have just got them out of a problem, really delivered a fantastic service, and you ask the question, then they can only say no. And
If you've done such a good enough job that you've saved it, then they're going to give 10 minutes of their time, aren't they?
yeah, absolutely. And you don't need 300 vendor testimonials on your website. If you were to ask 10 vendors and 3 of them said yes, then that's going to be pretty compelling, especially if they're each, you know, a different sort of vendor with a different sort of problem, because I think people like to see people like them.
Yes, so people have to relate to the story. So you almost
Yeah.
have. But that does sound like an awful lot of hard work, Neil.
Yeah, but you only have to do it once.
True.
So I think that would be, you know, that's up there as the, you know,
That's the gold standard.
the gold standard. If you can't get people to appear on camera, then at least you can write about it, but very much from the point of view of them being the hero, as you said, and intersperse that with, you know, if they're not prepared to appear on camera, then they may write something, or they may allow you to quote them and have their words in that. And very few, I think, would object to doing that if, as you say, you've got them out of a sticky problem or you've really helped them.
Does this also work for landlords and tenants?
Absolutely, yeah. And I think using the example that I did of, you know, it's far more compelling to talk about a real person had this challenge and we helped them solve it, rather than just saying, you know, we do HMO management. It's a real relatable thing. I think tenants as well are a massively untapped resource. I don't particularly talk about it in the book, but I think forward-thinking letting agents could do very well to adopt what I call a tenants first approach. Now, that's not to the exclusion of landlords. It's not saying you don't need to be compliant and all the rest of it. But if you actually prove that you deliver a great quality service for your tenants, tenants and ex-tenants are a massive untapped resource that most letting agents
Almost.
have.
I mean, I heard of one agent who basically found out that the daughter moved to a house and she was slightly autistic and really wanted CBBS, so they actually organised CBBS over the weekend. I mean, that was 5 years ago, and still I remember it.
Yeah, but I think, without being particularly cold and calculating about it, if you're in a local town and you've got a churn of tenants, naturally just happens. Agents need, for a start, to give themselves the right to maintain a relationship with tenants and ex-tenants after they've left. And I know we're going off on a tangent, but one of the key things to maintain that relationship with a tenant as they move into being an ex-tenant is not to be short-sighted and fuck it up at the move out by getting into an argument over a £50 carpet cleaning bill. But assuming you leave and everybody's on good terms, then you should be communicating with your tenants and ex-tenants, because it's far easier to get them coming back to you than paying for an ad on Rightmove. But I think using tenants and ex-tenants in your storytelling is incredibly powerful, because if people have a negative perception of estate agents as being, you know, all being alike, then I think letting agents are in an even worse position, in terms of most tenants will be very critical of the service that they receive from letting agents. So actually, if you are delivering a good service and you can actually show real life tenants saying these people are a little bit different, then that's going to count a long way, and
landlords will pick up on it as well, because landlords want their tenants to be looked after.
Absolutely. And you know, certain types of landlords, you know, depending on their personality type, that will be the key thing to them. Others, you know,
well, let's prove it. How many landlords don't put their rent up because they love their tenants so much?
Yeah,
and there you go.
Completely. I mean, there will be some, you know, the typical out of town investor, London city boy who's bought a flat that he's never even seen. Perhaps not, but there will be certain, the more the landlord type rather than the investor type, who the care and the service you provide the tenants will be the most important thing to them. And if you assume there's sort of roughly 3 or at most 4 personality types that a landlord might fall into, well, that sort of tenant testimonial, tenants gushing about the service you provide, will nail that landlord type.
And it all comes back down to stories. It's all in the book, boys and girls. Thank you for your time today, Neil.
Cheers.